Welcome to the Thinking the Unthinkable podcast, our latest leadership conversation. Hello, I'm Nick Gowing. Dream mad, dream crazy. That's what our guest entrepreneur for this podcast tells his colleagues and bosses. His aim? To inspire them to think positively about sustainability, nature, and biodiversity. Yes, dream mad, dream crazy. It's brave, it's bold, and it works. So welcome, Inder Poonaji. Inder, we want to find out from you why all this works. Please share the answers so everyone watching can learn and benefit. Inder is Director of ESG and Sustainability at Modulaire, which is a global company that creates modular workspaces. Inder leads on sustainability in 23 countries. Previously, he had a similar role in other companies like the food giant Nestle. So for the next 18 minutes, dream mad, dream crazy. Inder, welcome. Why these words? What impact do they have?
They have a terrific impact because when you let people's imagination run, they can do things where they're not limited. And if you dream mad and you dream crazy, you're not bound by cultural norms, regulations, or boundary. You can think the impossible.
But Inder, where the words mad and crazy, that doesn't go down naturally and very comfortably within a corporate world.
Well, I think it's really interesting. We're all people at the end of the day. You know, we can be in a suit and a tie, but you can be a father, a mother, brother, sister, friend, colleague. And sometimes it's just giving the people the permission to think like this because they're so confined into the normal behavior and the norms that are set and the taboos that are set. And what I try to do is to say to people, it's okay. It's all right to think mad and think crazy. Because when you think mad and crazy, you're not doing damage to anyone. These are just thoughts and ideas that come out.
And what kind
And
of
they don't cost
reaction do you
anything.
get?
It ranges, it ranges. Okay. So there's people in the past who thought I was the mad, crazy one in the room. And there's others who think, wow, this is quite good. This is quite interesting. Here's another view. So there is sort of, it ranges from people who take it and others who sort of reject it. But in the main, I find people want to be positive. They want to do good. I feel everybody wants to be loved and everybody wants to do good, but it's given them the opportunity. And one of the opportunities I give, I don't have much power. I don't have much anything. What I can give them is a positivity of thought. And thought is such a wonderful thing. And, we've had people, if we look through history, great thinkers like Plato, Kant, all talk about imagination, bridging those wonderful from everyday sensories to sort of higher knowledge. And that's how you get it, by thinking big, thinking mad, thinking crazy, thinking anything. And thinking is so important. And sometimes we haven't done that. We've walked away. And what today, what I want to sort of say as well is that we don't want to become a 1984 world where we're confined, where thinking is done for us. What we need, humans are unique in that they have the capacity to think laterally in any way. They can connect things. A bow and arrow is one of the most incredible tools ever made. To connect a stick, stone, and some string and make it into a weapon is just thinking. Art on cave walls is just super intelligence.
But Inder, tell me about the kind of reaction you get, because you're asking people to think crazy, think
Yeah.
mad. We say, actually, you can say to people, be wacky, but actually in being wacky, you're also being visionary. So the language is really important here.
Yeah, and I think the idea is to go beyond limits. It's not just being a bit wacky or a bit this. This is about being totally having no limits in thinking. And we have to let our imaginations just run riot. And it doesn't matter where it leads us. It doesn't matter where we are. Some of the ideas that people come out with, it's okay. and it's really important that they do come out with something, and it's very childlike words as well. They're not scary words. They, being a bit crazy, being a bit mad. It's a bit playful. It's allowing and giving the license to do that. So yeah, I do get different reactions. I do get some people. I do a lot of conferences and do a lot of moderation, and people generally like it. They genuinely take to it. I teach on various courses on MAs and MBAs and EBAs, and the students there are mature students who, for the first time, have been told, "Okay, let's think of a sustainable idea, but you can whatever you want it to be, let it be."
Do people really shed their constraints, shed their restrictions, shed the orthodoxies? In other words, do they think, we call it creating new mind muscle, not a box, not about being out of the
Yeah.
box, but to think differently and be confident to do it?
Yeah, and not all of them will do it, but the vast majority will get onto this. I mean, I do various exercises. I sometimes just give them a bunch of magazines and say, right, let's vision the future, where you cut out shapes and pictures and come up with the sort of ideas they want to do. We talk about not um, what would you do in 50 years time? What could you do in 100 years time? And those are the kind of things that really, and I give the example of Brunel. Brunel is an incredible thinker. I don't think he's given the credit he should be, Isambard Brunel. If you read into Brunel, what he talks about is shrinking distance. And that's an incredible concept to say, I will shrink distance. And he did this through the Great Western Railway. What he wanted to do was to get from London to New York the fastest way. So the trains, the bridges, the tunnels, the boats, everything, all those put together shrink. Now, imagine someone saying that in the sort of late 19th century. It's just absurd thinking. Somewhere, they would have thought he's mad. He's crazy. What is he talking about? Shrinking distances. And we have the same thing today. We need to have that same kind of thinking of not just having one idea, but linking ideas and making sure that we understand sort of the holistic nature of it. And that's why Isambard Brunel is one of my sort of all-time sort of guys to go to when I really want to understand something. I go back to his sort of works. He was not just. I I say this quite to a lot of engineers. Actually, it's quite interesting you say this. There are dream makers and there are dream makers, and engineers are dream makers.
What about
So
those who expect perfection in everything they
I
do?
I I, I
You make a
think
point of saying that better a flawed diamond than a polished pebble.
yeah, that's the Confucius saying, and I totally believe that. I mean, if we wait for perfection, nothing moves. Yeah, and perfection is the enemy of progress. Perfection is the enemy of progress, which is commonly said in sort of a lot of circles nowadays. And it is true. If we wait for perfection, nothing really moves. And we've seen that in a lot of sort of the climate debates, where there's so much talk goes on trying to get to the decimal point or something, where your gut instinct says, "I know this is right. I can get on with this." So we can tie ourselves in knots. And people like Newton and people like Copernicus, okay, they built system, but it wasn't perfection. It
But
was
all that, you're saying that all that's applicable to what we're doing today and all the challenges we face.
Yeah, and I think we constrain ourselves in trying to get to perfection. I've seen so many dogmatic approaches where they're trying, they've taken 10, 15 years to get to something. I could have told you, or you could have told me and said, right, I think this is this thing. I do a work group with students where I say to them, list what you think are the biggest problems in the world. And then I say to them after 5, 10 minutes, what do you think are the opportunities? What can we do better? And within half an hour, they've come up with the SDGs, the Social Development Goals, because it's all there. They know that there's poverty. They know that there's degradation of environment, and they
What
know
kind
that,
of level of success do you think you're having? Because I heard you talk about we've got to must design out waste.
Yeah, so
We must not leave it to the back end. We must do it now.
yeah. So my thinking on this has always been I've always had this one saying is design in sustainability, design out waste. And if we do it at the front end rather than waiting and dealing with the issues at the back end, then it's a real problem. And this is classic. This is classic thinking where rather than designing in sustainability at the front, this is where designers, engineers, hold the key. So you design it in at the beginning. So it's an in. So whatever output you get should be an input for something else. And this is known in the world of circular economy or reverse logistics. This is the kind of thinking we should be doing. We shouldn't just be inventing something saying, oh, now I've got a problem at the end. What do I do with it? We should have thought that up right up front.
Explain what you mean by loops within loops. That's
Okay,
another
so
core
this is something
principle.
I came up with many years ago, and luckily I had the opportunity at Modulaire Group to actually do with this. So loops within loops is a circular system where what we try to do is to keep design spaces, virtual spaces or modular spaces, and what we try to do is keep them going round and round and round. And we're up to now in Modular Group we have units that have been around 20, 30 times. So they've visited various sites, people have used that space. So the idea is to reduce virgin material, and use by refurbishing and by just improving little bits here and there, we keep the thing in the system as long as possible. And then only sort of hazardous waste of things we can find solutions for. So a really good example is carpets. We use sort of lino flooring. We use, and now we found a way where material of that flooring comes in after we finish with it. We can send it back to the supplier, they will reuse it or they will rework it to create more liner space. So this circular economy is trying to keep things within these loops as long as possible. And the secret, I think, of it is right at the beginning to design it in and not wait for waste to appear at the end.
One other big point you make is about collaboration and vision. And you urged it several years ago. Any real progress on that? Because would suggest to you that on many of the things we're talking about, without collaboration and the weight and the mass and the force from joining forces, it's going to be hard to achieve a lot of what is needed.
Yeah, and I think this is something which has been sort of dropped off in the years. Collaboration is really important. And without collaboration, and we don't see the Earth as the Earthship. I don't know if you remember Balding's 1966 book, yeah, where he talked about spaceship Earth. And we are on a spaceship Earth, and we're not separate on separate planets. And without that collaboration, working together where we can. I know in industry we have restrictions, but there are thoughts we can work together and work better together. So I think collaboration is one of the keys or golden keys to all unlocking this. And the way you see collaboration occur, it really does work wonders. I've worked in the food industry, and when you see that collaboration really come together, it really does work.
Are you saying
But
it's a missed opportunity for many people
yeah,
then?
yeah, I don't think it's strong. I don't think it's well governed. I think there's so much uh, sort of people trying to keep knowledge to themselves and not sharing it. It becomes a bit more difficult because you find companies are spending vast amounts on research on the same thing, whereas there's collaboration and the point of differentiation is competitive advantage on certain aspects where consumers would pay. But collaboration, if we can find a lot more of that, I think it would be a really good thing. But there is a real lack of it. I work with some innovation groups, and we're trying to get customers, suppliers, and everyone together, not to discuss the sort of detailed part of it, but just a generalistic view of where we should be heading, how we can work with each other. Uh, if you don't work with the waste industry, if you don't work with design industry, if you don't work with all the uh, people who do economics, people who do the micro thing, if we don't all think together, the system doesn't work. And
Let
that's
me
what we've
just
got. We've got a real broken system.
we've got about 3 minutes left. Let me
Yeah.
try and bring this together. What's the value of storytelling in what you're getting over? You and I are talking about this. Hopefully, the significant numbers of people will see it. But having a compelling narrative of leadership, of communications, of stories, and so on, is there a way in which people can appreciate exactly what you're saying, being more radical and upskilling their minds as well as their capacity?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it just, when I was young, I was always told if you aim for the stars, you'll touch the moon along the way. And that to me has stuck in my head forever. And that's what I say to people. Let's go for the stars. We'll touch the moon. Okay. If you don't look at the stars, we don't aim for the stars, then we'll never touch that moon. And this is the power of words. It gets you to think. It's getting complex ideas to clarity. There's a wonderful saying, that if there's 1,000 voices going around, it's the one that resonates in your hearts and other people's hearts. That's probably the best guide. So it's all of this is really important to us, and giving good examples where you've had success, where there's opportunities, there's experimentation, all that works. But it needs a coalition, it needs collaboration, and it needs a joint vision. And it also needs this madness thinking, crazy thinking, because without that, we don't have the Copernicus, we don't have the Nicholas Tesla, we don't have the Brunel. And this is what they bring to the table. They bring this, let's go for it.
And how much does speed matter in all of this because of the urgency, particularly what's happening on sustainability and climate and biodiversity and nature and so on? Does
Yeah,
speed actually help dreaming mad and dreaming crazy?
yeah, of course it does. I mean, Joni Mitchell sang that famous song, They Paved Paradise, and then you had, so we've had, it just takes so long for us to do things. Whereas, when they sent man to the moon, they did it within 10 years, a decade. And yet here we are still trying to sort of, argue about scope 1, 2, 3 carbon, which is just total bonkers. Yeah. Let's just focus on the things we have to focus on and do them right, and leave all the utter clutter out to the one side.
So, Inder, dream mad, dream crazy. What's your overarching message which you'd like taken away from our brief conversation here?
I think dreaming mad, dreaming crazy, we know that if you can think beyond boundaries and look at the idea of possibilities, we know we can do some great things. And we know that boundaries are a real problem in that education sets boundaries, a whole life experience sets boundaries. But dreaming has no boundaries, and dreaming crazy has no boundaries. So I would love people to sort of come up with ideas in organizations and let everyone think and where we can get to. So, I this is like the Gutenberg moment, the printing press where we sort of, you know, it revolutionized thinking, it revolutionized communication, and that's what we need. We need a revolution of ideas
And
and
final
ideas.
question, though, how do you persuade people to take that step beyond the boundaries, beyond their comfort zone?
And I think it's talking education and awareness, and it's the usual thing, but it's people taking action, not waiting for perfection, not waiting to be given permission, but just doing it and just doing something really. I think the we've had the circular economy around. I think we spoke about the idea of milk in the glass bottles of milk. What a great idea! We had rental leasing companies. All this needs to come back. We need to move from linear to circular, but it's the idea that the freedom to think and the freedom to express ideas and take on ideas
And
is
I
really.
use those words brave and bold at the beginning of this discussion. Is that what you would say? Got to be brave and bold and take risk.
One of the best words I've ever come across in management speak is courageous. And it's really funny because when I did my first performance appraisal, they said, "We want you to be courageous." And I said, "That's not a problem. that's the least of my worry." And it's something which is, I guarantee you, it will be in most performance appraisals in companies, but do they act on it? That's what we need to do. Get that one little box really working. And we will get to a better world. I am really optimistic. I think, you know, this is the golden opportunity, the golden generation that can really make change.
Well, Inder, thanks so much for sharing all of that with us about dreaming mad and dreaming crazy. And I hope we've been mad and crazy enough in the last 20 minutes. So thank you very much indeed. You can reference every detail that Inder has given us. That's because a transcript of the podcast is posted in parallel on our website, along with contact details for us and also for Inder. Do please join us when we next have a conversation about thinking the unthinkable. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you'll find all our podcasts very much in the same vein of frankness and ambition. So from me, Nick Gowing, until the next time, keep thinking unthinkables. More than ever, it's both possible and necessary. From Inder and me, dream mad, dream crazy. Bye-bye.